Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for what you need to know about financial aid. My name is Rebecca Cazacrea. I'm the coordinator of financial aid at Fulton-Montgomery Community College, and I'm here with my colleague, Moira Samick, who is a financial aid advisor also at Fulton-Montgomery Community College. And what we'd like to talk to you tonight is what you need to know about financial aid. Some of the topics we're going to discuss is what is financial aid? What is the cost of attendance and expected family contribution? What do all these terms actually mean? What is financial need? How do we know what you need to go to college? The categories, types, and sources of financial aid. What is the FAFSA? And some special circumstances. What does that mean and how do we handle that? So our first definition, what exactly is financial aid? Financial aid consists of funds provided to students and families to help pay for their post-secondary education expenses. Pretty simple definition for something that can be kind of complicated. Cost of attendance, what does that mean? Cost of attendance is a term that we use in financial aid to determine the overall costs of sending your child to school. So it's tuition and fees. That is always charged right to the bill. Room and board, sometimes that is a direct cost to a student if they're living on campus. Sometimes that's an indirect cost if they're living on campus, but it's always accounted for in the cost of attendance. Books and supplies, and we also account for transportation and miscellaneous expenses. What are the expenses that your child will need while they're at school? The expected family contribution, what does that mean? How do we know what's expected of you as the family? Well, what this is a federal methodology, a calculation that is a measurement of the students' and families' ability to pay for post-secondary education expenses. It's made up of two components, the student contribution, so the income and assets from the student, and also the parent contribution, income and assets for the parent. Combine those two things, and that makes up a total expected family contribution. How we determine financial need is we take that overall cost of attendance, we subtract out that EFC, and that equals financial need. So we take the overall cost that your child will have at a particular school. And one point is that cost of attendance is different from school to school. We subtract out the expected family contribution, which is a static number. That number stays the same no matter where your student goes to school because it's based on your information. We subtract that out and we come up with financial need. And how we determine a financial aid package is we take that financial need amount and build from there. So for instance, if you had a college that cost $5,000, you had one that cost $15,000, you had one that cost $50,000, and you had an expected family contribution of $5,000, the first institution of a $5,000 cost of attendance minus the $5,000 expected family contribution, that student would have zero financial need. The second institution of $15,000 minus the $5,000 EFC, they would have $10,000 in need. Now this is the same student, same family. The third institution of $50,000 minus the $5,000 EFC would have $45,000 in need. So depending on the institutions your student is looking at, their financial aid packages could be drastically different from school to school. Moira?
Different types of categories of financial aid are need-based aid and non-need-based aid. Need-based aid is exactly what we just discussed. Cost of attendance minus the EFC is your need. So that's how we figure out on the need-based aid what you're eligible for. Non-need-based aid is any type of financial aid awarded to students who do not qualify for the need-based aid. There are several types of financial aid: loans, scholarships, grants, and work-study employment. We'll review each one. Scholarships are awarded to students based on merit, characteristics, variety of different items that can be taken into consideration when students are applying for scholarships or are awarded scholarships. It could be based on their degree program, their GPAs, credits, characteristics such as blue eyes, brown eyes, those types of things. Grants. Grants are awarded based on need, sometimes and merit. Types of grants that we offer are Pell Grant, the SEOG grant, which is a supplemental educational opportunity grant. There's also the New York State TAP grant for those who are going to a New York State school. There's also the Excelsior Scholarship Grant, which could be a scholarship and a grant. And there are other types of grants that other schools have to offer, such as the Teach Grant, and things like that. Work study and employment. Work study is a job that is offered on campus. It is awarded and the student can sometimes use it towards their tuition and fees bill. And other times, depending on the school, the student actually earns a paycheck for the work study on campus. And then there's student loans. Student loans are offered after completing the FAFSA. We can determine what you're eligible for in loans. Each student could be eligible for a subsidized loan, an unsubsidized loan. The subsidized loan is a loan where the interest is paid for by the government while the student is attending school. The unsubsidized loan is where the interest is accruing while the student is in school. And then the other type of loan is a Parent Plus loan.
Where all of these types of aid, gift aid, student loans, or work study programs come from, first and foremost, is the federal government. The federal government determines all those types of federal types of grants, like the Pell Grant, SEOG. Next is the state. New York State in particular has one of the most generous state programs of all 50 states, and that is the New York State TAP Award, like Moira had talked about. The next group of sources that you will look at are the colleges and universities themselves. They have lots of opportunities for students to receive merit-based aid, so based on their grade point average, need-based aid, which is based on the expected family contribution, also foundation monies. Lots of schools have foundations and provide scholarships to students that they may have to apply for or may just automatically be considered for, and that you would have to talk to each individual institution to figure out what they have available. For instance, FM has, our foundation is very active, and we have lots of scholarships dollars to award, and it is one application that our students file, which is very quick and very easy. And then they go into a pool and they are determined, the scholarship could be determined based on their characteristics. So we do encourage students to always apply for all types of scholarships available to them. The next set are private sources. So outside of the schools, these are the scholarships or awards that you will see in the paper. For instance, the MCT Federal Credit Union has in Amsterdam has a scholarship available to students of the Greater Amsterdam School District. There are lots of things that you'll see in the papers or you'll get emails on that could potentially be dollars for your student. There are also resources out there on the web. One of the biggest ones is FastWeb, where students can go out, they create a profile, they tell them who they are, what their background is, what their major is going to be, did their parents or grandparents belong to any organizations. And then what they do is they send them emails based on that criteria about scholarships that they could be eligible for. You know, we often have told students that it is a kind of a part-time job sometimes going through those applications, but you never know what that scholarship application might get you, even if it's covering a book. That's a good thing. The last place to look for is your employers. The employers may have tuition benefits for you or your student. They may have scholarships that you can apply for. My dad was a firefighter. His firefighter union had a scholarship. I applied for it and got it that year. So, you know, there are lots of places to look for dollars, and we do suggest that you apply everywhere you can for the littlest amount of $50 up to, you know, whatever the max can be, because all of those dollars add up. So we do suggest go out and look for those types of, that type of aid. So the federal government is your largest source of financial aid. It's aid provided primarily on the basis of financial need. So we go back to that cost of attendance minus expected family contribution. You must apply each year using the FAFSA. And the reason why I emphasize that is every October, you will have to file the FAFSA for the years, or for all the years that your student is in school. So this is not a one-time application. It's every year that your student is in school, and it's available October 1st of every year. The eligibility requirements must be met. There are lots of eligibility requirements on there, and it'll walk you right through that. Your federal student aid programs, we touched a little bit about this in the overview, but your federal Pell Grant, that is the biggest grant that the federal government gives to students who have expected family contributions that range from, this year it was 0 to about 5,500. The Iraq Afghanistan Service Grant, Federal Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant, the TEACH Grant, Federal Work Study, direct loans, and plus loans. We touched a little bit about those. One point about Federal Work Study and the SEOG grant. Those are considered campus-based awards. And what happens with those, unlike the other ones, like the Pell Grant or direct loans, where everyone could potentially be eligible for those, the SEOG and Work Study, we are awarded a certain dollar amount every year to award to our students based on criteria. Those are campus-based awards, like I said, and it is a limited pool. So when we say to a student, get your FAFSA in as soon as possible, the reason why is because we start awarding those types of grants, SUG, work study, also scholarships and need-based grant awards, as soon as the FAFSAs are available and we start packaging. Once that money runs out, it runs out, and we don't have the opportunity to get any more. So if a work study job is something that you really want to get on campus, you need to get that application in very quickly so that you are first in line for that pool of money. Next are your states. We talked about this as well. Residency requirements usually apply. So for instance, New York State, TAP award. You need to be a New York State resident going to a New York State school. And that's not SUNY or CUNY. That's SUNY and CUNY and every New York State school. But that is the requirement for TAP, which is a little different from Excelsior. Excelsior, you have to be going to a New York State, SUNY or CUNY to be eligible for that. So you just want to make sure that you've got your criteria right and straight and make sure that you're applying for everything. We always say, cast the wide net, apply for everything you can, and let us determine what you're eligible for. Aid may be provided on the basis of both merit and need. So for instance, with the TAP award, you are first and foremost awarded based on your New York State taxable income. But after your first semester, not only is it based on your New York State taxable income, but it's also based on the number of credits you passed with a certain grade point average. So you have to maintain both of those things to continue to receive your TAP award. The TAP application does use the information from the FAFSA. It is in the beginning, it's a link that you go right out and you can complete the TAP application. But don't worry, if you miss that link, New York State will email you and say, hey, the application is available. You've indicated you're a New York State resident. Go on out and get this application completed. And the deadlines vary by state. And so we just say, get everything filed as soon as you can. The website for the New York State TAP application as well as Excelsior is hesc.ny.gov. We want to make sure that you see this website so that you know that that's where you have to go. If you missed the link on your FAFSA, this is where you'll go to complete that. Your colleges and universities aid, again, provided on the basis of both merit and need. Aid may be gift aid, so that's the money that the student does not have to pay back at the end, or self-help aid, which are the student loans that they will have to pay back, or work study where they have to work for those funds. They use the information from the FAFSA and or institutional applications. And one point on the institutional applications, actually 2 points. Some colleges have their own financial aid application where they start to gather some more information beyond what the FAFSA has. There are also other schools that provide or ask for what's called the CSS profile form. Now, you haven't heard us say it yet, but you will hear us say it several times. The FAFSA is the free application for federal student aid. You do not have to pay anybody to fill out this form, the free application for federal student aid. But the CSS profile form, which a lot of private schools use, and there is a list on their website, there is a charge for that form. But they use all of the information on there to help students determine what type of need-based aid they are. Deadlines and application requirements vary by institution. So please make sure you're checking the financial aid websites on all of the institutions that your student is looking at, which it can get a little crazy sometimes because a lot of schools have different deadlines. Just try to keep it all as organized as possible and let us know if you have any questions on that. Your private sources are your foundations, businesses, churches, civic and charitable organizations. Like I said, search the paper, search the internet, talk to organizations that you belong to, Rotaries, all sorts of places that could potentially have scholarship dollars available. Deadlines and application procedures vary drastically from source to source, and begin researching private sources very early. Like I said, sometimes this could be a part-time job, but it could be lucrative in the end. And then your employer, they may have scholarships available to the children of employees, or you may consider going back to school yourself and you can use that benefit as well. Or they may have educational for their employees, like I just said. So, look everywhere for whatever possible dollar you can find. We repeat ourselves constantly in this presentation because we want to make sure that we get the point across that we're looking everywhere for as much money as possible to make this this endeavor of your students' education as inexpensive as possible.
Now let's take a look at the free application for federal student aid. As Becky said before, it is free. You do not need to pay anyone to complete this application. There are a ton of helpful hints when you're going on to the application. While you're in there, every box you click in, there are certain little question marks. There's even a chat feature now. So what is the free application for federal student aid? It collects the demographic of all the financial information for you and the parents and the students. Income and asset information. They take that information and they use a calculation to calculate your expected family contribution based on all the income, assets, and family size. The colleges will use the EFC to offer financial aid and to determine whether you have need-based aid or non-need-based aid. It is available in English and Spanish. This can be filed at any point in time after October 1st. And the academic year and the application that you're looking for is the 2022-23 academic year for the FAFSA. For our seniors currently, that is the application you would like to use. There are going to be 2 applications out there, and you want to make sure that you're on the tab that says 2022-23 academic year, before filing the application. If you get in the application and it's asking for 2019 income information, that should be an indicator that you're in the wrong year, because this application that you'll be completing should be asking for the 2020 year federal tax information. And the colleges may set their own FAFSA priority dates. So it is important for your student to be researching the deadlines for each college that they're interested in to make sure that they complete the FAFSA application and submit it by that date. The free application for federal student aid can be done in several ways. FAFSA on the web, which is on the internet. You go onto the website and you can complete the information. There's also a new myStudentAid mobile app, which is very convenient. Students seem to have no issues with completing it through their phone and or their tablets and being able to complete the application through that system. There's also paper FAFSA application, which is very hard to get. Anything you do by paper will take a lot longer to process. The FAFSA on the web or the mobile app is processed within 5 business days to the colleges that you indicate on there. The paper FAFSAs can take
4 to 6 weeks.
4 to 6 weeks, yes. And then FAFSA on the phone, never had anybody do that. And then the FAA access to CPS online is for the financial aid administrators in the offices. Benefits of using the FAFSA on the web or myStudentAid app. Again, like I said, it does process quicker. There are built-in edits that prevent costly errors. So if something doesn't look right, for one example, a lot of students will put the adjusted gross income in, and then they'll put taxes paid as the same number. It will error out and will give you an error message that says, take a look at these 2 items again. Skip logic also allows the student and the parents to skip unnecessary questions that might not pertain to them based on questions you previously answered. The last option too is you can also use the Internal Revenue Service data retrieval tool, which imports all your tax information on the lines that it is looking for. And then that saves you some time also when completing the application. When you submit it through FAFSA on the web and myStudentAid, it is more timely submission of the original application, and any necessary corrections can be corrected at any point in time. So it does get to the colleges quicker for you, and we can then begin processing the applications that we receive. More detailed instructions and help. So every box that you click in, there is a question mark that you can click on to find out exactly what they're looking for and what maybe line they're looking for on your tax return if you can't use the data retrieval tool. The other thing too is now there's a chat feature. So on there, if you need to, or if you're doing this late at night, you can click on that chat feature and talk to an individual to ask a question if you need to. The ability to check your application online, so you can go in and see where it is. Is it processing? Has it been processed? Has it been completed? And a simplified application process in the future. It is called a renewal process. It keeps all of your information, such as your address, your phone number, date of birth, all that stuff in the application. So if you just click renew, you're really just going to complete the new income information on the next FAFSA. So this is the website, FAFSA on the web. So it's studentaid.gov, and this is how you will go in to apply for aid. 2 ways to go into the FAFSA on the web is the student can enter the application through their credentials, or the parent can actually go in on their side and complete their section of the application for the student on their own, and it ties the student and the parent together based on demographic information.
The myStudentAid mobile app is starting to gain a lot of exciting, I think, because it's easy to use. We have started to see a lot of students and parents who are coming in with their tablets and their cell phones and telling them to download this app to get that FAFSA complete. So it has mobile ability to begin, complete, save, and submit the FAFSA. And we do suggest that you use it if a tablet or your smartphone is the only option that you have if you don't have a desktop. The myStudentAid mobile app information is protected the same way as FAFSA on the web. It prompts the applicant to create a save key. A save key is just another level of protection to make sure that only you are going into this, allowing for the completion at a later time of the FAFSA. So if you have to start and stop because you forgot some information, you can do that. You save it, you create that save key, and then use that later on to go back in. The FAFSA completion is tracked just like it is online. Successful completion of each section is indicated. So you will get, instant feedback of whether you completed that section or not, and it will save it at that point in time. So you don't, if you have to go out, you won't lose everything once you go back in. It will still be there. There are you have to agree to some terms, and this is the section where you're making sure that you're agreeing that you're disclosing information and that it's all true and correct, and you just hit agree and submit. And then there's the confirmation of your submission. It tells you that you've completed it. It gives you a confirmation number. It gives you a DRN number, which if you ever need that, then you'll hear that term DRN. And then it estimates the EFC. So it will give you an idea of what your expected family contribution is. And that is the number that often parents will say to us, okay, well, what does this mean? And we can tell you what that means for most things based off of that number.
The IRS data retrieval tool is utilized within the app and the web. You can actually use this tool for students and parents who file a tax return, and it will pull that information from the IRS, all of your income, taxes paid. There's a ton of different items that it covers when it pulls in the IRS data retrieval tool and your tax information from the IRS database. Participation in this is voluntary, and students can choose whether to transfer the data to the FAFSA on the web. The IRS will authenticate the taxpayer's identity. If the tax record is found, the IRS transfers information to populate the FAFSA questions that it is asking, so you don't have to go back and answer those. You'll notice in the application, it'll say transferred from the IRS. This can reduce documents requested by financial aid offices for the procedure called verification. If a student is chosen for the procedure of verification, we have to collect documentation, and we have to then begin verifying that the information you put on the FAFSA is accurate and true. So it will require some documentation to be submitted to each financial aid office. And then this could, using the data retrieval tool, reduce that amount of paperwork. Certain tax filers cannot use the IRS data retrieval tool. So if you indicated on your FAFSA that the tax return was not completed, you will not be able to transfer information to the application because there's no information there to transfer. If your marriage date was somewhere in between January 2021 to present, you won't be able to utilize it because chances are you didn't file a married filing joint return, and we need to combine two tax returns at this point, and income and information. If your first 3 digits of your social security card begin with 666, haven't run into anybody with that, but if they do, you can't use the IRS data retrieval tool. If you filed a non-US tax return, you can't use it. If you're married and you filed as head of household or filed married separate returns, then you can't use it because the data retrieval tool cannot pull in 2 separate returns. So again, you'd have to combine that income and information in the boxes that it is looking for on the application manually. If neither married parent entered a valid social security number, you can't use it. And if non-married parent or both married parents entered all zeros for social security numbers, you can't use the data retrieval tool. When you are completing the FAFSA, it is going to ask you to create this for the student and the parent, one parent, an FSA ID. This is used by students and parents throughout the financial aid process to authenticate that it's you signing the FAFSA form, signing up for student loans. This is your electronic signature. So this is also, it goes to Social Security Administration and make sure that your date of birth, your social security number match your name that's on your social security card, and it verifies who you are. So only the owner should create an FSA ID, and you can do this and apply at fsaid.ed.gov, or you can actually create the account while you're in the application.
Well, one point that we've seen a lot when we have gone out into the high schools is students using their high school email address for the FSA ID. Can you give us a little hint on whether to do that or not?
Sure. So with the FSA ID, you do not want to utilize your school email accounts. And the reason for that is because the school email accounts will get deactivated for the students after a certain point in time. So when that happens, if you forget your password for the FSA ID and the student needs to retrieve it, they can't because they can no longer get into that email address. So you need to make sure that with the FSA ID that the student and the parent use a personal email that they use on a regular basis and have access to. So if you ever do run into that issue where you have to retrieve a password, that you can do that seamlessly and not run into issues later.
And can it be the same email address?
No. So you both the student and the parent have to use individual email addresses. You cannot use the same email address on the FSA ID information when creating it. And it will indicate that if your email address has already been used for another FSA ID. And then the FAFSA on the web worksheet is a preview of questions that may be asked regarding basic information for the student and the parent if applicable. Selective service registration is no longer a requirement for Title IV aid, which it was previously in previous years for the FAFSA.
Although we do believe for the 22-23 FAFSA, that question will remain on the application. It is no longer a requirement for Title IV aid. So if you see the question, go ahead and answer it. But just know that they're no longer checking it or notifying us that a student needs to register. So some general student information that you're going to need for the FAFSA are social security numbers. So if you don't have your child's or your own social security card, now would be the time to get the copy. Your citizenship status, your marital status, and your highest education level completed by your father or your mother. What they use that information for is to see if you are a first-generation college student. There are some programs that do assist first-generation college students in getting through college. One particular program is called TRIO, which we have here at FM. So that's why they answer that question, or they ask that question. The student dependency status. This is always, a common question at financial aid nights. The FAFSA does ask questions to determine a dependency status for a Title IV federal student aid, not for the IRS purposes. If you answer no to all of the dependency questions, your student is dependent. When your student is when they answer no to all those questions, we often get the question, well, My student's not going to live at home. They're going to be out on their own. They're independent, right? No, that's not how the federal government defines independency. You have to answer yes to one of the questions on the FAFSA in order to be an independent student. And they range from, are you over the age of 24? Are you married? Do you have children of your own? Are you a veteran of the U.S. Armed Services? Are you an orphan or ward of the court? And I believe there are a few more. But financial independency is not independency for the FAFSA. Information about the parents of dependent students. They are going to ask for tax income and other financial information. They're going to look for, are you a dislocated worker? Are you a recipient of means tested federal benefits in the previous 2 years, SNAP benefits, free reduced price lunch? Your assets, your stocks, bonds, CDs, cash savings, checking accounts. Your assets do not include your primary residence, but if you do have rental property, we need to know the asset on that. And then any other untaxed income. Information about your student and or their spouse. Tax, again, income and other financial information. Basically the same questions. Are they a dislocated worker? Did they receive any of the means tested federal benefits, their assets, their untaxed income? Some additional information they're also going to be looking for. What colleges are you looking to apply for? And this is where you're going to need to know or have an idea of where you might be looking to go to school. You can send the FAFSA to any school you want. They will then tie that into their admission. So if you think that you might apply to a college, get them the FAFSA information sooner than later. We always say put everybody that you are thinking about. That way, if you do apply for admission, then they can just tie that in and then off you go with getting a financial aid app or financial aid award letter. And then your housing plans, where are you living? On campus, off campus, with your parents, that determines the overall cost of attendance. So again, we go back to that definition of a cost of attendance, and where everything goes back to your cost of attendance minus your EFC. The budgets are determined based off those housing plans. And then if you do pay somebody, and we strongly suggest that you don't, if you have questions about the FAFSA, we are more than happy to help you out, no matter if you're coming to FM or not. We are your community college, so we're here to help. There will be a section in there that they have to identify who they are, so that if anything goes wrong, they have somebody to go back to.
When you get all the information again into the FAFSA application, the signatures are required. If you save your FAFSA due to the fact that you don't have the signature, or the student goes in, completes their section, and then is waiting for the parent to complete it and sign it, just note that anytime you save the FAFSA, it is only good for 45 days. So if the signature is not provided prior to the 45 days, then it wipes everything out and you have to start again. So just keep that in mind. The signature is required for a submission of your FAFSA, and the schools will not get your FAFSA application until the signatures are completed. And if you choose a different way of signing instead of electronically, then it will hold up the process by 14 business days. So just keep that in mind also. Signatures are required. Electronic format using the FSA ID is the best way and quickest way to get your FAFSA to the schools. You can choose to do the signature page and print that out, but again, you have to have a printer readily available to you while you're completing the FAFSA application. And then also the paper FAFSA, if you're sending that in, you're actually signing the application and sending your signature in paper to ink. Frequent FAFSA errors, social security numbers. If you're doing it for multiple students, you have twins, or the parents are doing it for the student. Sometimes they'll put their social in and this as the student social. So you need to make sure when you're on the application, in the upper left-hand corner, there's a ribbon that says student information or parent information. Just always refer back up to the top left corner to see what page you're on and whose information they're looking for. So social security numbers are a big one. The other one is divorced, widowed, or remarried parent information. So if parents are divorced or separated, but are remarried, you are now a family unit. So if you're using moms, you live with mom, mom gets remarried, mom and stepdad's information, income, and everything needs to be placed on that FAFSA. Income earned by parents and step-parents are included. Untaxed income also. U.S. income taxes paid goes back to where the students are manually entering income. If box 1 is your adjusted gross income and you put $30,000 in there, but taxes paid, you put $30,000 in there, you're going to get an error that says, check this out, because you can't earn $30,000 and pay $30,000 or have $30,000 withheld in federal taxes. Household size, they've made it very easy to calculate how many people are in the household. So read carefully that section when you're filling it out. It'll automatically count the student and the parent. Then, and then real estate and investment net worth. If you have a camp up north, or you have rental property, that's your real estate and investment net worth. It's the assessed value minus the debt. So you need to make sure that you have that calculation readily available to you too. FAFSA processing results. So what happens when you submit that FAFSA? It goes from the student to the central processing system. And then after they complete the process and they submit it back to the colleges, then we complete our section and review it, get those award letters out to the students. The student will get an email notification of a student aid report when your FAFSA has been processed. This is provided based on whether you put a valid email address on your application. If not, they will mail you a paper application of your student aid report. Just verify everything that is on your student aid report is accurate. And if not, then you can make corrections by either going on the web, or if you have the paper student aid report, you can make the corrections on there and submit it. But remember, anything you do on paper is going to take a lot longer to process and get that information to the schools. So things can change over time. The student aid report, again, is sent, can be sent by paper, or if the FAFSA is filed without providing an email address. And the student aid report is an acknowledgement of what you completed and put in every box on the FAFSA. So without providing a valid email address, that student will get the student aid report mailed to them. Otherwise, it is available on FAFSA on the web. When you log in, you can grab your student aid report at any point in time. The ICER is what the colleges get from the central processing system. So when your FAFSA application is completed, the schools will get what's called an ICER, which is the actual application, but on our end. So we'll review the ICER and may make requests for additional documentation if we see something that might not look right on our end, and give you the opportunity to be able to correct that to see if it benefits you in getting more student aid, especially if you put, higher income, or you accidentally put your retirement, your 403Bs or 401Ks in the investment income. So those kind of things we are trained in looking for when reviewing your ICERs when it gets to the colleges. Making corrections on your FAFSA. There's several ways you can do that. You can use FAFSA on the web if the student has a FSA ID, and that's your electronic signature that you'll create. You can update it on the student aid report that is mailed to you, or you can submit the documentation to the college's financial aid office. I will give you one tip though, if you are submitting documentation to the college's financial aid offices and asking them to make the corrections, we ask that the student and the parent do not go on their FAFSA applications and try to make corrections on their own also at the same time. It will clog up the system and then make it harder for us to receive the actual information, which then will hold up your award letters and packaging that's necessary for you to know if you can afford college.
So after all of that, you will hopefully have noticed that when you're filing the FAFSA, it's very black and white. You take your tax information, you put it on the FAFSA, and there you go. Well, what if things are not black and white? What if there are conditions that exist that cannot be documented on the FAFSA? For instance, you lost your job due to the pandemic, or you didn't work for a year, or things have happened in the family. There was a divorce, a separation, or a death. What the financial aid offices need are a written explanation and documentation be sent to us in the financial aid offices, because we can take a look at that and say, okay, a special condition exists. What was going on in 2020 is no longer relevant in September of 2022. So we are authorized by the Department of Education to do what's called a special circumstance. The colleges will review and request additional information from you that after you send in the written explanation as to what's going on. And then based on a lot of regulation, a decision will be made on how we can take a look at this. And the decisions are final and cannot be appealed to the U.S. Department of Education. Really what that means is they've given us the authorization to make changes for a student if it is proven and documented. And they leave that up to us to be able to get the best information and get the best financial aid package for a student that we can. Some special conditions that do exist: unusual uncovered medical or dental expenses, the death of a parent or a spouse, loss of employment, extraordinary dependent care, all things that we probably have seen in the last year and a half. A divorce or secondary school tuition for your student. And one special circumstance, that we talk about is the student cannot obtain parental information. And we like to highlight this one because a lot of times we'll have a grandparent or an aunt and uncle say, well, my child, the child is with me, not with their parents. And often we have to take a look at that situation and how we make a decision on, do you need to have your parent information on there, is first we look at the dependency questions. But there are some circumstances that don't fit into those dependency questions. And what that is called is involuntary dissolution of the family. And we can potentially take a look at that student with documentation and say, okay, this student is not living with mom or dad for no choice of their own. And we could potentially take a look at them as an independent student where we will determine the financial aid package based on their income alone. So special conditions are not only these that you're seeing on the screen. If any situation has impacted your income, it is worth a call or a letter to the financial aid office to say, hey, this is what's going on in my life right now. And they will tell you based on that, whether they or we can take a look at that and say, okay, well, let's see what we can do here. So make sure that you're always asking the question. Moira and I often will say to students, or to people who say, well, I don't know what I'm asking for. That's okay. Even that question will help us get to the question. So even if you walk in our office or you pick up the phone and you say, I don't know what to ask. we will start asking you questions to get down to what it is that you need to ask. So please just always make sure that if you have any kind of question that you give us a call. And how you can reach us is with these numbers. You can reach Moira and I at any point that you're filing this information. We welcome any questions that you may have. We really honestly feel that we would rather have you ask the question instead of being nervous about it or thinking that you're not answering that question correctly, whether or not you're coming to FM. We always stress that. Again, I said it once, I'll say it 100 times. We are your community college. We welcome the questions that you have. And we want you to get through this process as successfully as possible. And on a side note, we want to just make sure that you know that on November 20th, we will be participating in SUNY Financial Aid Day. You will be receiving information. That also happens to be our open house day. So if you'd like to visit FM as well as get some help with your FAFSA, please join us on November 20th. You can check out our website at fmcc.edu to get dates and times and everything that's going on. Like I said, we will be sending invitations to students for the SUNY Financial Aid Day. We are working with all of your local high schools right now to figure out what is going to be the best and safest way to get you more information. So please contact your guidance counselors to see, what could potentially be the next steps. With this presentation, we are providing you a slideshow so that you can write down any questions that you have and use those phone numbers to give us a call. And we'll also be giving you some helpful hints on, things to start to gather now, because October 1st is a lot closer than we want to believe that it is. And that is the date that you can start to file these FAFSAs for the 22-23 school year. Moira, do we have anything else to add to this?
I don't think so. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope you find this presentation helpful, and we are here for you. So if you need anything, don't stress out, give us a call. We're here.
Thank you.